Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Sven here, welcome to my room. In this video I'm going to talk about a particular type, namely the ESTP that I have meant to talk about for a while, but it's only now that it occurs to me that I still haven't talked about this type. So there are a few reasons why I wanted to talk about this type. One of the reasons is that one of my good friends, one of my best friends is an ESTP, and I think that being friends with him gave me the beginning of an insight into how ESTPs function organically, and a sort of a deeper look than maybe some of the stuff that we can read about them, which is sometimes a little bit infamous. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that it turns out that actually, even in general, not even mentioning my friends specifically, I quite like ESTPs. And from conversations I've had with some INFJs, this is not necessarily, well, not that it's not it's a strange thing to like ESTPs, but to actively like ESTPs, given that they're extroverted, given that they're sensors, and given that they're Ts. It's not necessarily the first type that you'd think about if you're an INFJ as being a type that you get on with. It's possible, but it's not necessarily something that's going to be the first thing you think about. So that's the second reason. And the third reason that's connected to the second is that there is this idea, quite prevalent it seems to me in the MBTI community. I don't know how ESTPs themselves, how they relate to that, or rather what they think about it, but there is this idea that I seem to pick up, that just ESTPs are sometimes always flirting with the possibility of being some sort of ambitious sociopath or something like that, which again it cannot be further removed from my conception of a healthy ESTP. Now, unhealthy versions, maybe this is something that we can also discuss. Again, for me to say that I have an intimate knowledge of this type would be wrong. I mean, I have a knowledge of this type which is more roughly equivalent to my knowledge of other types, but it's really through becoming friends with this guy Stefano that's my perspective changed, and he tested ESTP number of times pretty clearly, and after having given the matter some thought, I think it is the case. And fourthly, because actually there is a fourth reason why I wanted to talk about this, is simply that most of my videos are about intuitive types, and all of my videos, that are titled "What I and INFJ Think of This Type," they're all about N types. I've done one about INFPs, I've done one about ENFPs, and I've done one about INTPs. Possibly I've done other ones. But I've talked about indirectly or directly about ENFJs and INTJs and other types too, and not so often about sensors. So this could be a good opportunity to correct that. So what is it about ESTPs that I like? Well, if I look at the functional makeup and next to it my personal experience, what I would say is that there's two possible experiences that I've had with ESTPs, and if I look across the breadth of it, these two experiences are kind of actually polar opposites. It's interesting. It's never really like with a lot of types I experience various levels of excitement or disappointment or frustration, or just like people are that way. It's very rarely a black or white thing. It's like some people are boring, some people are exciting, and some people are kind of in the middle. Some people are kind of towards the boring, and others are towards exciting. And the thing is, in my experience with ESTPs, it's either been like the experience has always been like kind of thrilling and really fun, and really exciting. And I have to say, intellectually stimulating too. And then the other experience has been like, I'm not really even engaging. This is so foreign to me, this is so alien to me that I don't know, I can't engage. and so it would be interesting to try to understand what, explains this opposition. And perhaps the reason why I have not made a video on ESTPs until now is that I had not quite put the finger on what explains that difference, which is not just a difference, but it is a kind of an extreme difference, almost a polar opposition between either just having a great time and getting on really well with the ESTPs, and on the other side, feeling kind of really alienated from that kind of existence. So if I say that I put the finger on it, maybe I can start talking about what this means. Well, I mean, obviously there are a number of reasons. ESTPs, just like any type, have a spectrum of intelligence and moral behavior and all that. And so for me to get on with an ESTP, just like with any other type, usually requires that they are intelligent. As it so happens, a lot of ESTPs are very intelligent and they do very well in their professional domains. I have a friend who's an ENTP, a very good friend. I'm actually going to visit it with my girlfriend in Malaga at the end of this month, which I'm really excited about. So he's an ENTP. He works in in the domain of sales for like this technical company, which requires having a background in understanding software, security software for banks and stuff like that, and databases. Know nothing about that. And he tells me that ESTPs there are better, almost more naturally able than he is. And he's not just an ENTP, but he's a smart ENTP that has done really good studies. But he's just like the ESTPs. They're just really smart in the way that they understand things kind of very quickly, and they have a very, very good fluency at talking to people about these things and convincing people, of course. That's kind of what's well known, and that's the use of SE with FE. But that they're very smart via the use of TI, because they've got pretty high TI, and I think that the use of TI, especially for an INFJ who also uses TI, can be something that draws INFJs, particularly the INFJs that have a bit of a TI temperament towards ESTPs, because there's a lot of ESTPs, contrary to what is commonly believed perhaps, they're actually very, I don't know if cerebral is the term, but they like to talk, they like to use their TI, and they like to talk about that abstract stuff. Usually they will associate it with concrete reality more directly than INFJs because of SE dominance. But they like to understand how things work. Like a typical TI user and a proficient TI user, auxiliary in this case, will really want to pursue the explanation of things, and that just makes for really fun conversation. With my friend Stefano, we've had at the moment I'm not in Geneva very often, but we've had debates about all different sort of things, down to logical debates about logic, or about ethics, an ethical point of view on society, or how people behave. Where does it start from? He's also super interested, much more than me, in politics and in the study of political behavior, in sort of also the study of how political parties behave, and I just often learn stuff from him, and it's always a lot of fun. Now, I do not think that this is the criterion for the main criterion for getting on with an ESTP from an INFJ perspective or not. It's certainly something that helps, a TI sort of interaction there. But I think that's perhaps the key for having friendships and good experiences with ESTPs is if their FE tertiary is developed and well integrated. I think that this is the key, to be honest, because SCTI is the way it is. It's literally an equipment for pursuing things in the moment with pretty developed rational powers that are able to, if necessary, leave too much emotion aside. So that's potential for being a very powerful kind of human being at achieving their purposes, even if perhaps the long-term vision is a bit like the character of Roger Sterling in Mad Men, if you've watched that show. He clearly seems to be an ESTP, so he's very smart, he's very good at getting what he wants to get. The long-term vision is not his main concern. But leaving this aside, Roger is someone who has relatively well-developed Fe. And the thing is, tertiary Fe is potentially a very dangerous thing, I think. You can see that not just for ESTPs, but also for ENTPs. Tertiary Fe is essentially a function that, if it is not very well integrated and if it is not very well developed, gives all the advantages of Fe manipulation without the concomitant importance of having the Fe moral compass, external moral compass, by which to circumscribe and limit the way in which we deal with people in this way. So it allows, if you use Fe in an effective way, you're able to sway people a certain way by like adopting certain modes of behavior, being able to say certain things which perhaps are not the expression of your deepest values, but you can still do it for a good reason, for a noble purpose. The thing about tertiary is that because it is not inferior, it can really be a function that people who have it make use of. If it is not very developed, if it is not very integrated, if it is only partially integrated, it can happen that it is used in a way that is not sociopathic, but that might explain why sometimes people who are Fe tertiary come across that way. Because it is the ability to sway and manipulate without feeling the presence of the externalized moral compass to circumscribe that tendency that INFJs also have. And in fact, an unhealthy INFJ is very capable of having the very same behavior as an unhealthy ESTP. And I've seen that on forums, I've seen that in reality. It can happen. And it's the similar kind of plight. It's probably something that ESTPs are more like, and ENTPs are more likely to be in danger of, because it is tertiary instead of auxiliary. And by contrast, ENFJs, for whom it is dominant, are probably the least likely to have that happen to them. But if an ESTP has good Fe, well-developed Fe, I think that there is no reason why they couldn't get on really, really well with an INFJ, because there will be the Fe connection, the TI connection, very, very developed. Nothing prevents an ESTP from having a pretty developed inferior NI, which is always nice when you're talking to an INFJ. I think that perhaps my friend Stefano also has a bit of well-developed inferior NI, because he likes to talk about intuitive things, maybe not as often as I do, and with not as much stamina, but he still does. And the SE, the SE is something that, again, from the perspective of a healthy ESTP, is something that could, especially in conjunction with TI and Fe, really attract an INFJ, because it's the quintessential way for an INFJ to get out of their comfort zone, is to go into the inferior function, which is theirs. They understand SE, they make use of SE, but it's just not their main strong point, and it's something that can scare them a little bit because it is not their comfort zone. But like a lot of comfort zones, they can become a little bit smothering for a person if one stays within them all the time, and it's good to go out of it. And this part of it is like scary, and other part of it is attractive, and it's the way the ESTP masterfully uses SE, extrovert sensing, attracts INFJs and delights their inferior SE. And I think that is another clue to understanding why these two types can get on so well. And exactly in the same way, INFJs and I can be very nourishing to an ESTP that, consciously or not, is always in need of learning to integrate their inferior function better, and that happens to be the INFJ's function. And so you can see the way in which this makeup is actually pretty compatible, and I think it explains why I can have some very great friends that are ESTPs, and there is nothing wrong about that. But again, let's not forget, I think that in this particular instance, whether it be for the INFJ or for the ESTP, and probably even more for the ESTP, one of the keys is a well-developed and well-integrated Fe tertiary function. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys, and hope to see you soon. Ciao!